Hello everybody, good evening, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news now on the United Stands as Amorim and Manchester United go after Diogo Costa, the Porto goalkeeper. Is it possible or is he heading to Manchester City? Also, big breaking news around Nico Williams. He's spoken about how it's every kid's dream to play at Old Trafford. Will he be playing at Old Trafford in the summer as a transfer? More importantly, will he be playing at Old Trafford in the semi-final? He's missing a game for Bilbao this weekend with a groin injury. How significant is that groin injury going to be? Also, David Ornstein, Garnacho transfer update. We'll give you that as well. How are you all doing this Saturday night? We don't always do a Saturday night live, so it's nice to be here. If you've got any topics or anything you want to discuss, then please do get into that. I know a lot of people have been talking about whether we should be keeping Casemiro. Maybe that's a start of a 10 a little bit later in the show. But look, let's get straight into it. I want to talk about the Costa story. Apparently, reports from Portugal are saying that Man United have got scouts watching Costa a transfer summer move for the goalkeeper. I've got an interesting take on that, but look, there's no doubt he probably is the goalkeeper that Amorim wants, but Amorim wants Gyökeres. Is he going to get him? Probably not. Amorim wanted Kenda, didn't get him. But let's start off with this story coming out about Nico Williams. So he is out of the game for Bilbao this weekend, Athletic Club, whatever you want to call them. He will miss tomorrow's game as he's out with a groin injury, and it's unknown whether he'll be fit to play Man United in the Europa League semi-final. Look, groin injuries, how long are you out for a groin injury? I'm actually Googling it. How long are you out with a groin injury? The duration of recovery from a pulled groin, also known as a groin strain, depends on the severity of the injury. Mild groin strains can take 1 to 2 weeks to heal, while moderate strains may take 3 to 6 weeks, and severe strains could take 3 to 4 months. You can guarantee he's probably got the lowest one, which would keep him out for 1 or 2 weeks. Well, as we know, it's 2 weeks till we play Athletic Club. He'd probably be fine. I just don't. I don't want to sit here, by the way, and say I hope he's injured. I don't want to do that. I've never done that. I'm not about to change. I actually want to play teams at their best, and Williams is a fantastic player, and I was actually quite looking forward to taking them on with that player. Some people will be like, please, 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 I hope he's not fit. But I look at it in a different way. I'm like, yeah, he's a game changer. Yeah, he makes them better. But with him, they might be a little bit more on the front foot, which allows us to be a bit more attacking on the break or when we've got the ball. Without him, it might make them a little bit more pragmatic. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. Look, if he's out, it helps us, but I ain't going to sit here thinking he will be out. I expect him to play in both legs, and I think we have to prepare for that. But it is a bit of breaking news, and it is interesting. I suppose of more interest to some people would be what he said about Manchester United when he said that every kid's dream is to play at Old Trafford. He is expected to leave Athletic Club this summer. He was meant to be going to Barcelona last summer, post the Euros, where you've got Yamal on one wing and Williams on the other. Barcelona apparently can't afford to do that deal this summer. I don't think we can't afford this deal either. So, I mean, look, I would love Williams at Manchester United. I think he's a fantastic player that, although he plays in systems where he plays as a winger, I do think behind the striker in one of the 2-10 positions in a Man United team, he'd do ridiculously well because he's quick, he's skillful, he does create, and he can score goals. So I think he'd be brilliant, but I think he's more likely, like Richard says, to go to Arsenal. I think that's probably where he's going to go. But look, you know what? Take the positives. I'm not going to start doing videos that we're signing Nico Williams because I don't think we will. But does it not fit in with what we were talking about last night about the momentum of Thursday and what it does for Manchester United? You know, Nico Williams will be talking about every kid dreams of playing at Old Trafford because of nights like Thursday night. We have a pull. We can't do this deal because we're bloody rubbish and we haven't got any money. But if we've got money and we've got trajectory, you can do those deals. It's as simple as that. We can get these players. We've just got to create the circumstances for it. Money helps, and being in the Champions League helps. That's all it is. How do you rate my ideal summer? Ederson or Barella? Gyökeres or Osimhen? DeMarco, Kluivert and Cunha. I like that summer, Brandon. It's a very, very good summer. I'd love to know how you're going to pay for it. That's my only issue, and I think that's the issue with everybody else. Algerino says, let's talk about Costa. Well, Costa is the big story I wanted to start off with, but I just want to get that Nico Williams story in because there is the groin injury, which is relevant for the Bilbao game. So, Portuguese reports have got Manchester United scouting Diego Costa, the Porto goalkeeper. He is in contract until 2027. He has a £63 million buyout clause. Now, Man City are heavily linked to him because they've got goalkeeping issues of their own. They apparently think that they can do a deal for about £50 million. That is where I sort of check out. What I will say about Costa is that, well, Harge has got it spot on. How do you afford it? But, and look, Mustafa makes an interesting point. Costa was poor against us. Goalkeepers make mistakes. Goalkeepers have bad games. We're not buying the FIFA version or EAFC version of Costa where he makes no bloody mistakes. And even on the game, he'll make mistakes. Goalkeepers make mistakes. Raya makes mistakes. Courtois makes mistakes. Neuer makes mistakes. Goalkeepers make mistakes. The point is he better than what we've got? Is he what Amorim wants? And I think on both points, he is better than Binder and Arna, and he is better, and he is what Amorim would want. So I look at it and I go, this goalkeeper would be perfect for Manchester United because obviously he's a modern ball-playing goalkeeper and he's one of the best goalkeepers in Europe at the moment who isn't at a big club. But he's going to come at a price. I mean, I don't actually know how old he is. Diego Costa, let's have a quick look. So he's 25. I mean, you know, he's going to be your goalkeeper for 10 years. £50 million is an investment. Look, we don't have that money, I don't think. But it's interesting that we're apparently scouting him and Amorim would want a ready-made goalkeeper, I suppose. In a normal football club where finances are there, you would be having the argument that, yes, you can get me a cheaper goalkeeper who's 21, 22, but he might take 2 or 3 years to be ready. Whereas Costa is ready and is going to cost a bit more. But he's ready, which means less mistakes. He's ready, which means he will be our goalkeeper for the next 10 years. £50 million over 10 years, you know, it's £5 million a year. It's a good investment. But we don't have the money. So, again, don't be Dave don't be Dave who thinks he's an accountant down the pub. Be a Man United fan who wants the best for the football club. We should be doing this deal if it's what Amorim wants, even if it is £50 million, because he'd be our goalkeeper for the next 10 years. And he's ready. So we should be doing this deal. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we will, because I know, like you know, we haven't got any money. So we need Costa, but we also need Gyökeres or Osimhen. We also need Cunha. We also need Edison. We also need a Frimpong. We also need a centre-back. And they all come at a price that we accumulatively just don't have. It's bloody frustrating, if I'm being honest. But, yeah, I would like to bring... We should be talking about these players because these are the types of players we need to bring in. And bloody hell, you know, look at where we are in the Premier League. I did the preview this afternoon. We've got 38 points. We are 20 points off our worst ever Premier League total. And even if we win our last 6 games, we'll still finish 2 points below our worst ever Premier League total. And we're not winning our last 8 games. We could be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 points worse than our worst ever Premier League point total. That's horrendous. To smash your worst ever Premier League points total by a lot is horrendous. So if I'm Sir Jim Radcliffe, I'm analysing the season and I'm going, okay, even if we win the Europa League, what went wrong in the Premier League was horrific, disgusting. Even if we win the Europa League, happy days, yeah, we're in the Champions League, we're going to win the Premier League, la, la, la. But reality, Premier League's your bread and butter. Europa League is a cup competition in Europe and it's not the Premier League European Cup competition. Maybe you can justify the fact that we've won it because the teams aren't as good, it's a little bit slower, it's a cup competition. But in the Premier League, where you play every week, we've been absolutely shocking. We've been exposed over a 38-game season as horrific. So, yeah, it's great that we've won the Europa League if we do, but there's a big problem here, and it's called the Premier League. How do we go from, 50 points to 70 points and in the top 5? Well, do you want the answer to Jim? Yeah, it is a Costa in goal. It is another centre-back. It is a right wing-back. It is another midfielder. It is another number 10. And it is another striker. And all of them need to be ready to go. They all need to be about 25 or older. So that's what we need to do. We need to be in the race for top 5 next season. And I'm saying, in absolute fairness, no sensationalism, we need 6 25-year-old or above players into that team to get in the top 5. For the squad, for the bench, for the first team. We need that mix. And I was watching Villa earlier, and I was looking at their bench, and I was like, fair play. Aston Villa in January realised they were halfway through a race. They sold Duran and they bought 5 players in. And look at what they're doing now. 5 Premier League wins in a row, FA Cup semi-final, and obviously PSG knocked them out of the Champions League. So this is what we need to do. I don't know how we find the money to do it, but we do need to do it. 100%. Who is more costly, Cunha or Nico Williams, says some math? Cunha's available for 60 million. Nico Williams' release clause is... apparently it's less. The 22-year-old has a 58 million euro release clause, which was considered cheap after his Euro showing. The side most heavily linked was Barcelona, but Williams appeared... okay, so... I never... I don't know how true that is. I would have said his release clause is about 80 million. I mean, for 49 million. Trouble with release clauses is you have to pay them in the front, up front, but... And he is 22. He's going to be a bloody good signing for somebody, isn't he? He is. Somnath, thank you very much for that. I had a dream where you and my daddy, it was nice, as One Inch Wonder. Ball playing would be a very slow secondary attribute for a goalkeeper for me. Shot stopping and commanding of his area would be much higher. For ball playing, we need much higher technical level all over. I agree with that, Patrick, and that's the mistake that Erik ten Hag made, isn't it? He went for the ball playing goalkeeper when we didn't have the ball playing team. Gwilhelm says, what about Boniface? For me, he is the one for Manchester United. I've been told that Boniface is off to Saudi. The new Saudi approach is to bring in younger players like they did with Duran. Operation PR was bringing in people like Ronaldo and the older players. Now they want to bring younger players in. And Boniface has had no links to any Premier League club at all for months. So I think he might be heading to Saudi because it's just been so quiet with him. But then again, things can change. What about Boniface? That was from Gilhan. Joan Garcia, better than Costa, single-handedly keeping Espanyol in La Liga comfortably, freshly promoted, and around 25 to 30 million, says Ravel. I still think we should get Gyökeres over Williams, says Connor Wright, and I read his 300k wage demands are high for Arsenal, says Jacob. Is that, well, there you go. Is that what Nico Williams wants? Sanil says, I really hope we win the Europa League, but no way should it create a false positive like FA Cup win that this squad can make top 4 without major overhaul. And did everyone forget the 18-year-old we signed, says B Caveman. And how do you rate my ideal summer? I've done that one. Yeah, I think that before I talk about this Garnacho story from David Ornstein, I think that there has got to be, United Nick, welcome to the Members Club, there has got to be a really big wake-up call in this fan base about what's about to happen in the Premier League. And I understand, because I feel it, the elation and excitement about the Europa League, but it's easier to justify the Europa League as luck than it is to justify the Premier League season as bad luck. The Premier League is week in, week out from August to May over 38 games. The Europa League is an 8-league system with a lot of bad teams in it, and then it's a knockout tournament. And it's the same as the FA Cup last year. The Premier League season was horrific, but the FA Cup saved us. And this year, it's even more contrasted. We've got to look at I said it this morning, you've got to look at the Premier League season, no matter what happens, and go, why did that happen? And okay, we sacked Ten Hag and we replaced him with Amorim. But even with that, I don't think it justifies smashing your worst ever Premier League points total. I think the reason we've been bad this season, the true reason we've been bad this season, is one that people don't want to listen to. It's got nothing to do with Ten Hag. It's got nothing to do with Amorim. And it's got nothing to do with injuries. I think the reason we are where we are in the Premier League is because it's where we deserve to be, which means we are a bottom half of table team. So therefore, that's scary because that means this is what we are. Regardless of manager, regardless of injuries, this is what we are. And that means next season, we will be around here again unless we add 5 or 6 really good players to this team. Why are we like this, Isaac? Because I think that some of the players that are coming through aren't coming through quick enough because there's not enough experience to develop them. You would probably expect Mainu to have a better season this season. You would probably expect Rasmus to have a better season this season. You would probably have expected Garnacho to have a better season this season. Funnily enough, I think the new signings, their first season's been okay. You look at Anthony, you look at Rashford, you look at Sancho, you look at Malacia, they've all disappointed. Mount and Shaw have been injured for basically all of it. They've disappointed. So, you know, when you take into account all those players I've mentioned there, you're getting on for 7, 8 players. That's a large proportion of the team. Of course, you've then had a few injuries as well, which don't help. Martinez has pretty much been out for the whole season as well. You know, Yoro's had a few injuries, but he's a new signing anyway. So you can sort of see why it's been a bad season, but ultimately, there's just not enough quality in the team. And I don't think United want that out there. I think United would like to hide, you know, I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe would like to sit there and go, at the end of the day, you know, replacing the manager halfway through the season, a few young injuries, you know, but the reality is, I think I would rather we had an honest conversation about where we are in the Premier League because we're not good enough, and an honest conversation about we're probably going to be around here again next season unless we bring some quality players in. But when United aren't putting that out there, are they doing that because they know they're not going to bring better players in? I think everybody knows United need 6 good signings this summer. And if they don't get them, Bournemouth, Fulham, Brighton, you know, Brentford, Chelsea, Newcastle, Villa, they're all better than us. They're all better than us. And that's my look, put it like this. Would Brighton would be in a Europa League semi-final? Would Brentford be in a Europa League semi-final? Would Fulham be in a Europa League semi-final? Would Villa be in a Europa League semi-final? Would Newcastle be in a Europa League semi-final? Would Forest be in a Europa League semi-final? Spurs and Man United are, and we're both in the bottom half. The bottom line is, it would be very unfair to say that the top 10 in the Premier League wouldn't be in a semi-final of the Europa League. And that's how you've got to make your head work. We are shit in the Premier League because we're shit in the Premier League. And being in the Europa League semi-final, we're very lucky that we qualified for it last year because I think most of the teams above us would be in it as well. We can't be apologetic for that because we qualified for it by winning the FA Cup. Unfortunately for Fulham and Brentford and everybody else and Chelsea, you didn't win the FA Cup. We won it legit. And it gave us this opportunity. And it's a hell of an opportunity. But thinking about next season in the Premier League, we've got to be a lot better. And I don't think that, you know, young signings or not many signings, I think sometimes you can look at a squad and go, oh, horrendous luck with injuries, horrendous bad luck with results. You know, they're much better than this. They're really a top 4 side. I don't look at this squad and go, this is really a top 6 side. I just genuinely don't. I thought it was at the start of the season. I don't think it is now. What are the odds that... Ellie says, what are the odds that Garnacho turns out like Rashford? I don't want to sell, but I see the future for him. And if we can cash out, I'm up for it, says Ellie. Interesting that you brought that in, because this is actually a story I wanted to bring in. NBC Sports Soccer, David Ornstein. Garnacho is still among Chelsea's winger options to sign this summer. Why is David Ornstein talking about that? Interesting, isn't it? It really is interesting, because I think that, for one, I don't think he is... What's this about Mason Greenwood? Marseille fans with a banner for Mason Greenwood and Luis Enrique. Get a move on. I don't know what's going on there. I thought he was doing well. I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, look, going back to the Garnacho thing. Look, if you can do with Garnacho what Aston Villa did with John Duran, and cash in so much money that you can go and buy 5 players or whatever, then obviously that's great. But I don't think we'll get good money for Garnacho. The truth of the matter is, in January, it barely amounted to 40 million quid. That was the best offer on the table, and it barely accounted 40 million pounds. So that's not gonna, you're gonna give Garnacho up at 20, who at 23 could go and do better than Alanga's done, and then you're going, what did we do that for? So we're not talking about 70, 80 million pounds here. We're talking about 40 million pounds for a 20-year-old who at 25 might be worth 80 million pounds. So I get why people want to move Garnacho on. I always have. For me personally, I don't. I think it's way too early. I think if he starts passing like he did on the Agate goal, we're sorted. It's literally... With Garnacho, it's literally a switch. He just needs to grow up. And he will, and it's not unfair to say he needs to grow up at 20. He's not 25, he's not 23, he's 20. When he grows up and flicks that switch of getting his head down and shooting or taking people on all the time, there's going to be a really good player there. Now, obviously, he might never grow up. Sometimes people remain selfish. But I think there's a very, very big chance that he's going to grow up at some point, and then he's going to be a hell of a player. Now, if you cash in on a player for 40 million quid who becomes a really good player elsewhere, I think it's bad business. If you cash in on him for 80 million quid, then I think you've done good business. So you can want Garnacho to go, you can not want him to go, but the price we're looking to sell, I think it's really bad business. But it's interesting that David Ornstein is there mentioning Chelsea again, who have already got one of our wingers that we don't want back. I mean, I'd hate to have Sancho back and Garnacho go. I would despair at that. But look, all I can say is that David Ornstein's mentioning it, and maybe there is going to be something in it. I don't know. The fact of the matter is that we're talking about strikers, we're talking about midfielders, we're talking about number 10s, we're talking about goalkeepers. And we know in January we couldn't even afford to do an 8 million loan deal for Tell. Rightly or wrongly, we couldn't do that deal. So how the hell have we got any money? Yeah. What are the odds that Garnacho turns out like Rashford? Look, it depends what your definition of Rashford is. Turns out like, Rashford up to 25 was fine. Okay, there was a couple of bad years in there, but between a teenager and 25, I think Rashford was fine. We forget that Garnacho's 20. Not new was just a new card. We need a new keeper and several other positions and need to spend wisely. The Europa League is so important this year, says United Nick. Thank you very much, pal. Hope you're doing well. Justin Stam says, Humelin, Diamonde, Cunha, Frimpong and Robinson would be my ideal summer after Reading, Rashford, Anthony, Casemiro, Lindelof and unfortunately Garnacho. Would you go with Nico Williams or Cunha, says Debraj? Cunha for me. Cunha for me. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I would go. Carlo Ancelotti's going to leave Madrid, says Greg. I think we all knew that was going to happen. Apparently he might be taking the Brazil job. I think Alonso will end up going to Real Madrid. Definitely. I fear Bilbao more than Tottenham or Bodo Glimt, says Nathaniel. Look, yeah, I mean, they're a good side. They're a well-organised side. We've not got a great record against Spanish clubs. I'm very excited about it. But we're still on that thin ice and it's still cracking. And if we fall through, we're frozen. All we can really do is, stare in the face of it and laugh, which is sort of what we did on Thursday night. I remember in the middle of March saying that if we go out to Sociedad, our season's over in the middle of March. If we'd gone out to Lyon, our season's over in the middle of April. If we go out to Athletic Club, our season will be over in the middle of May, which ain't too bad considering the season ends at the end of May. The problem with going out to Athletic Club or losing the final is there ain't no money, bruv, and I don't know how we deal with that. Look, for me, I still think there should be massive scrutiny in the ownership of this football club. I looked at, remember when the cameras panned over to Barada and Wilcox at 4-2? I didn't see two people there I massively trusted. To be fair to Wilcox, I don't really think much about him in relation to blame, but I look at Barada and I think some of his interviews in the last couple of months have been absolutely shocking. And, you know what? Honestly, I'm just going to say it. If I was Sir Jim Ratcliffe and I hadn't been massively responsible for what's gone on, I don't know why this isn't being said more. Just imagine Sir Jim Ratcliffe has bought 28% of the club and has basically said, you're my team to get Man United back. And he's not had a lot of involvement other than, I'm going to let you get on with it because I trust you. Nobody ever talks about it, but the season's been horrific. Absolutely horrific. We've sacked a manager at massive cost. We brought a new manager in at massive cost. We spent a lot of money in the summer transfer window and we've got no money left. And we're about to have our worst ever Premier League season and the club is broke. Yeah, you can blame Joel Glazer, quite rightly. Yeah, you can blame Sir Jim Ratcliffe, quite rightly. But what if they are sat there going, yeah, we are getting the blame, but a lot of these decisions have been made by this lot. It doesn't get mentioned enough that just maybe Sir Jim Ratcliffe's looking at Barada and going, mate, you're the fucking CEO. You've done fucking shit in this 12 months. Absolutely shit. You're the CEO. I've given you loads of power and look what's going on. So I don't sense there's going to be any change there because I don't think we can actually afford it. But I don't think it gets mentioned in the media at all. But we can sack the CEO. That can happen. And, you know, I think it's right to say that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's got to take responsibility and he's had a lot of stick. But the CEO ain't sat there doing nothing. There could be a change in that position at some point. Barada looked like he didn't give a toss at 4-2, says Marcus. He's a businessman though, isn't he, mate? He's not a Man United. He's not a Man United fan. He's a businessman. He's a guy watching something he's got responsibility for that he's not emotionally attached to. I don't mind that. The CEO is not a Man United fan. Like, you're a Man United fan. Like, you are emotionally involved. He's not a Man United fan. His job, he's paid a lot of money as, you know, one of the best CEOs in the world, apparently, to make Man United great. I'd love to know what's in Amorim's mind regarding transfers. He never fails to surprise, says Rob Always United. I think what's in Amorim's mind, re-transfers, is probably the same as what was in Van Gaal's mind and what was in Mourinho's mind. And what they actually got was nowhere near it. I mean, some of the players that Van Gaal wanted and ended up with is incredible. Didn't get anywhere near the players he wanted, and the same with Mourinho. I think the same thing is going to happen with Amorim. My educated guess with Amorim is that he wants Costa in goal. He wants Gyökeres up front. He wanted Kenda as one of the wide positions. I would imagine, it's hard to predict what midfielder he wants, and I would imagine he wants Cunha as his 10. So I think it's easy to predict probably 4 of the players he wants. Gyökeres, Kenda, Cunha, Costa. I'd be pretty confident that he would want those 4 players. He's not going to get any of them, I don't think. Certainly not going to get Costa. Didn't get Kenda. Certainly don't think he's going to get Gyökeres. And I'm not convinced he'll get Cunha. So, again, we're sat with the manager. One of the first things I've always heard from you lot, quite rightly, and I agree with it, is that with every man... And this is the scary thing, actually, because it's changed. We've been educated to change, and what are we supposed to do? Because they've educated us on the situation. But when Ten Hag came in, when Jose came in, when Ollie came in, we always said, we've got to get these managers plan A. It can't be more plan C, D and E. We've got to get the managers plan A. Because every manager that gets sacked, when their NDA runs out, their non-disclosure agreement, so 2 years' time, we'll get it from Ten Hag, they always give the interview going, well, look what Ollie said, one bad apple ruins the fruit bowl. Look what Van Gaal said, I didn't get the players I wanted. Look what Mourinho said, I wasn't allowed to sell the players that I wanted. We will hear this from Ten Hag as well. And every manager that comes in with more education, we always say, this time they've got to give the manager their plan A options. Okay, sometimes plan B, but predominantly plan A. Scary thing is, I don't see many Man United fans saying it anymore because we've been educated that there's no money. So we can't even demand what needed to happen with Amorim anymore because nothing's changed. He absolutely should be getting plan A signings because we've failed so many managers before him. But we've been educated that there's no bloody money anyway. So nobody sat there going, we've got to get Gyökeres. Oh, it's a disgrace we didn't get Kenda. We've got to get Cunha. We've got to get Costa. No one's saying that because they're actually going, we can't afford it. So this manager needs plan A signings, but nobody's really talking about it because we know he's not going to get them because there's no money. And that sort of makes you go, hold on a minute. How's he supposed to succeed? We're going to get him cheap plan C, D and E. And we've already seen what happens when you do that. So, look, it doesn't mean it's not going to work. That's just an observation about how we don't even demand he gets plan A signings anymore because we don't trust the club to have the money to do it. It's not it's an observation. But I think that's why so many of us say Amorim is our only hope. He's got to produce a miracle. Now, some would say he's got no chance. But did we not see a miracle on Thursday? Like, the guy needs to do what he did on Thursday on the regular for a long time because there is nothing else, is there? It's not like he's going to get plan A signings anytime soon. It's not like another manager's going to come in and get them either. The situation at Man United is we need to uncover a manager that's so good he can make us successful without what we think he's needed to be successful. He would want Trincao, cheaper if I remember correct, and has played 10 under Amorim. Inacho too. I like Moreira, but I've heard nothing, says Axel of War. I said this morning, keep an eye on Inacho. I think that's a deal with Sporting you could probably do for a reasonable price over a number of years. You know, the instalment payments. Trincao is another player that has played the system higher up, 25, release clause. You could probably do a deal there. They'd be quite intelligent players to bring in at reasonable prices. How much money you'd have left after that, I don't know. I really don't. Damien says, is there any concrete interest in Costa? Just Portuguese reports saying we're scouting him, but I think many people would just ask how are we doing that? And I'd say Man City are favourites to get him. Obviously, we can scout him, but where would we get the money from? Ryle says, this is a good question, actually. Get your comments in as well. Ryle says, if you were advising Sir Jim and you wanted to sack Barada, who would you advise him to get as CEO? Can you please list a couple of names? I can't, Ryle, because I've got no bloody idea about who is a good CEO in football. Technical director, sporting director, I have a few. I think we should have gone for Berta. He's now at Arsenal. CEOs, I don't know. I don't know who the good CEOs in football are and who's available, etc. United obviously went for Barada because he was under the CEO at Man City and ready to get promoted, and Man United offered him that promotion, and United obviously saw how successful City were in the Premier League. It was a clever appointment. Barada was a good appointment. Doesn't mean he's going to deliver though. It's like a transfer, isn't it? You know, Barada for me would be like signing Gyökeres up front. You know, It's exactly the same. I'd say Gyökeres to Man United up front is pretty much what Man United did with Barada as CEO. Doesn't mean he's not going to flop, though. But I think it was a good appointment. Thank you, Marcus. Barada, that was from Ryle, sorry. Ferrucci says the Glazers will still be a problem behind the CEO. Yeah, I mean, look, the brilliance of the Glazers, and I hate saying that word, but the brilliance of the Glazers are they still run the football club, but people think they don't. No, I mean, I don't need to add anything else. The Glazers own the football club, but people think they don't. It's true, isn't it? It's actually true. You know, for years and years and years and years, all those client journalists that are still client journalists used to write stories about sources at United will tell you that Joel Glazer runs that club like he's there. Everything goes through him. This is known. You can Google all this. These are written stories. Joel Glazer, even if you want to go on a bloody weekend away for business, he's got to sign it off. Like, minute management of things going on at that football club. But then Sir Jim comes in and goes, at the end of the day, they just sat there in America, not really that bothered. You know, they've never really been that bothered. You know, it was more Woodward and Arnold and everyone else, you know. And you sort of like, hold on, Jim. You might not have been following Man United for the last 10 years because you've been at Chelsea, but we have. And we've had stories for years about how hands-on Joel Glazer is. And now you're pretending he's never been hands-on. You know, how much are you? You know, what is this deal you've done? And like, Joel Glazer is still going to be massively involved at Man United. Joel Glazer was still involved in the appointment of Amorim. He was still involved with the sacking of Ten Hag. He's still involved in signing the cheque for Dorgu. He's still involved. People just don't think they're involved, but they are still involved, yeah. I watched Heat the night before the Lyon game in your honour, and I think I will do this for the rest of the season. My real name is Handsome Jimmy, says Nelson. The great thing about the film Heat is I feel that I could watch it every 3 months and still love it. It's one of those films. A few words. Arnautovic, example of a plan Z, says Harley. Mate, get in the chat. Give us your plan Zs. We've done a few. We are broke and we won't get the plan A players because it makes me laugh. Patrick Lynch says, we are broke and we won't get the plan A players and it makes me laugh then that the manager will be blamed and sacked and those backing him will be met with a chorus of you've lowered your standards. Yeah, it's a great point, Patrick. I've always said this as well. As much as I said Jose had to go, Ollie had to go, Van Gaal had to go, and even I accepted Ten Hag had to go, even though I didn't want it to happen. They were not backed properly. They weren't backed properly. You know, people always go, well, Ten Hag had £600 million. Mate, you can spend money badly. Mourinho had money. Was it spent on the players he actually wanted, or did we overspend on players we were desperate to get? Look at Anthony and Casemiro. £130 million spent in the last 2 weeks of a transfer window when neither of those players were actually what Ten Hag wanted that summer. How many more players were players that Ten Hag didn't really want? I mean, some people have said that Rasmus wasn't the striker he wanted. He wanted someone more experienced and Rasmus. So, look, that's just one example. But if you don't deliver managers what they need and they fail, they're always going to take the blame. But I think that it has to be a mitigating circumstance, of course. And I'm not here to talk about the past. I think that I've had some regrets about some of the managers that went, in hindsight, certainly Jose. But with Amorim here now, we can't keep making mistakes of the past. You can't keep giving managers things that really aren't what they need and expecting them to do well. Things have never been this bad. You know, people don't take this on board. The job that Amorim is doing is harder than the job Jose had. It's harder than the job Ten Hag had. It's harder than the job Van Gaal had. And it's harder than the job Ollie had. And the reason, every manager that comes in, their job's harder than the previous one. Because it's just accumulation of mistakes. And it gets harder every single time. Which means it's even more important that you give them the players they need and not inferior products. And that will keep happening for every manager that we sack. A-levels coming up. Can I have some inspirational words, please? This is Guitar George. Inspirational words. Well, look, I think that having had experience of those things, not A-levels, it's a short period of time where you have to put a lot of work in. But when you've done it and you've reaped the rewards, you'll appreciate it. And if you don't put the work in and mess it up, you'll wish you had put the work in. So if you're looking for inspirational words, I know how hard it is to study for such a long period of time, whether it's your A-levels, your GCSEs, or whatever you're studying for worldwide. It can feel like a relentless task, but there is a finish line, and the work you're putting in will be worth it. And if you don't do that and you don't do well, you'll regret it. Simple as that. So get your head down and realise you're doing it for a good cause, for a better future for yourself. It's a bit like what we've just been talking about, actually. You know, if Man United, if you want to pass your A-levels, that's like Man United winning the Premier League. And if we want to win the Premier League, we've got to do the right things now to allow that to happen. And if we do the wrong things or we cut corners, then we won't win the Premier League. Because you don't win the Premier League on luck. It's impossible to win the Premier League on luck. You might win it luckily on the last day, but the previous 37 games have put you in a position to win that. You never win the Premier League on luck. You look at Man City and Aguero. It's probably one of the worst things that have happened in football for me. And I always felt, you lucky bastards. Aguero, shove it up your arse. But when you think about it, years on, okay, Man City score, they're losing going into stoppage time, and they need to win the league. Dzeko equalises, Aguero wins it, and you go, you jammy bastards. But actually, the previous 37 games, they'd put themselves in a situation to do that. So yeah, it was unfortunate, but it's like Thursday night. Were we lucky, or did we put ourselves in a position to do that? And we did. So yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done at Man United. Inquisition says, not just giving them players, but break the cycle of sacking managers every 2 or 3 seasons. It's going to be a big season for Amorim next season. The media are arseholes, as we know. Certain elements of our fan base are arseholes. I don't include the majority, but it's a vocal minority. We heard them last week. Amorim out after a Newcastle game. I mean, unbelievable. It's literally an irrelevant game in between 2 massive games, and people are calling him a fraud and saying Amorim out because we lost to Newcastle. So I worry about next season because I don't see United in the top 6 next year, regardless of whether we win the Europa League or not. I was watching Newcastle today. They're going to be in the Champions League next year, and I think they're going to struggle. They haven't got a squad. They haven't got a squad for Champions League and Premier League. So we'll be in the same position. If we're in the Champions League, great. But unless we're going to buy 8 or 9 good players, we're not going to have a squad good enough for both. So I don't put us in the top 6 next year, but I think there'll be an expectation that we are in the top 6 next year. And then when we're not, and if we're flirting around top 10 again, the pressure will come. And then it's like, well, it's season 2. He should be doing better now. So these are the things that we know we're going to be fighting. Francesco says, good evening or morning, United Stand. What do you think would happen if Ahmad had played versus Lyon last Thursday? I don't think it matters because we won anyway. I don't. Maybe we would have won more comfortably. I certainly don't think we would have lost with Ahmad in the team. But the important thing is that we won without him, and the important thing is that he will be back. And when we're talking what we were talking about, Nico Williams potentially missing the semi-final, well, let's talk about Ahmad being back for that semi-final. Let's talk about De Ligt being back for that semi-final. They're 2 big players for us. Even if they don't start and go on our bench, the bench looks stronger. So, Rashford out, Ahmad the new number 10. If Rashford somehow weasels his way back into the team, I'll be disappointed, says Kino. You know what? I genuinely don't want to talk about Rashford. I watched Villa today. He hardly played. Whether he'll play against Man City on Tuesday, we'll see. I don't think Villa are going to sign Rashford. I really, really don't think they'll buy him. I hope they do, but I don't think they will. And if he comes back to Manchester United, I think it will be a marriage of inconvenience. I don't really think Rashford wants to come back and play under Amorim, and I don't really think Amorim wants him back either. And also, he doesn't suit the system. Where would you play him in this system? He's not a striker. He can't play out wide because you basically got to be a full back as well. And I don't think he's a number 10. So I just don't think he suits the system. I think, in fairness, Rashford will look at it and go, he needs to move. I think Amorim will stay the same. I think the club will want his wages off the books. So I don't see a way back really. But you never know. It could happen. I don't see Anthony back either. I don't see Malacia back. Yeah, nothing. Tejas says, I've still not seen any comments from Gary Neville over Thursday. Yeah, but in fairness to Gary Neville, I mean, he doesn't have to comment on everything, does he? I mean, maybe he's hammering him out. Mark, we've already lost to Spurs 3 times, says Jim. Yeah, I don't know how we've lost to Spurs 3 times this season, really. But I'm not... Look, we can talk about Spurs if we get past Athletic Club. I'm not interested in Spurs. They've had a shit season. We've had a shit season. They're mirroring us exactly. They need this Europa League to save them. Ange says he always wins a trophy in his second season, and he could well do it. So, look, I ain't worried about Spurs at the moment. We can worry about Spurs if we get to the final. Simple as that. They have been asked, but so have we. Rochelle says, I don't think Chelsea will sign Sancho, and I don't think Villa will sign Rashford. Clubs are not going to get fooled. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? Look, honestly, the summer is very concerning around outgoings and incomings. It could be bloody a right mess. It could be a horrific. I remember it might have been Patrick, it might have been Double D, it might have been somebody else saying, I expect the summer to be horrific. Everyone knows we need to sell players, so they'll wait till the end of the window. We won't be able to buy players until we've sold players, so we'll wait to the end of the window. Every other club that's competent will buy all the good players, and we'll end up in a bloody mess at the end of August. I don't think that's a bad prediction, but we'll live the summer. We'll witness the summer. What we've got to do first is win this Europa League, and that has to be it. Do you think Cambuala would suit Amorim, says Arta? I don't know. How well is he doing at Villarreal? Why do you think the media hates us so much? I don't recall Arteta getting the same treatment as our manager after a bunch of bad games, says I see dead bodies. Oh, I don't know about that. I think Arteta had a bad ride. I think Arteta did have a bad ride for a bit with the media. I think the media do go in on Arsenal. We're just Man United, so it happens more. Anyway, I'm going to pop off. It's Saturday night. I hope you've had a good show. It's always nice to do a Saturday night live. Tomorrow, it's 2 o'clock kickoff, isn't it? So countdown to kickoff starts at about just after midday. We might have a morning show. We'll see if there's anything breaking. I'll try and do a morning show around 10 o'clock. Minnie Brew says, love this community. Yeah, happy Easter to everyone who celebrates it. Sad day, 12th season in a row finishing below City, says Ras McRae, magician. It is sad what we've become, but I don't see Man City as a genuine target. They're a rival, but I don't see them as a target. It's a bit like Everton and Liverpool, isn't it? Everton don't expect to finish above Liverpool, even though they're a big rival. That's what's happened under the Glazers. I don't look at Man City as a viable team to finish above. They are better than us in every single way. We've beaten them in the Premier League this season at their place, and we drew with them at Old Trafford. We beat them in the FA Cup final last year, but predominantly they are better than us over a Premier League season by a long way. If we are in a competition with Chelsea, wouldn't we sell Garnacho to them? Says Timo. Look, if we want Delap and Chelsea want Delap, and we say to Chelsea, we'll give you Garnacho, and Chelsea say, okay, you can have Delap, that makes me feel sick, but maybe we will. I don't know. I don't know what incompetence we might try and unravel this summer transfer window. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching. Fantastic community. Always nice to link up. Take care, stay safe, and I will speak to you a little bit later.